All right, so in this video, we're going to start to look at other forms of a line that make it a little easier to graph when we're given different pieces of information. So here are our three linear equations. These are the three forms that we can either be given or that we can write an equation in. So slope-intercept form, that's what we've been focusing on for the last quite a few videos because it's very easy to graph from this form. So I have y equals mx plus b, and we can see that slope is the m and b is the y-intercept. So if I have these two pieces, I can very quickly graph this, or I can very quickly grab this from a graph. Now, we're not always given those pieces of information. Sometimes we're given the slope and a point. And we can use this to find the y-intercept. So I can plug that point in because I have x and y here. And if I'm given the slope, I can plug it in and we can solve for the y-intercept. Although there's another form of the line. It's called point-slope form. Very creatively named, right? So if I'm given a point and a slope, I can use this formula to write an equation without having to go back, find the y-intercept and plug it back in and do all these things. I can just write this equation and kind of be done. So it makes it a little easier. Standard form, there's not a whole lot of useful information given from standard form, so I either have to convert it to point slope or convert it to slope intercept in order to use it for these two purposes. Okay. So sometimes we are given it in standard form just because Alex kind of likes to throw those things at us. All right, so we're going to write an equation of a line given the y-intercept and another point. So with this one, I want to look at what are the 2 points that I'm given. So with this one, it looks like I'm given, that looks like -8 and -7. Oop, I don't know why I started right so crooked there. -7. So that's my first point. And my second point, let's see, I was going to see if I could find this one zoomed in a little bit. So my second point here is 0. I didn't go right or left, but I did go down 1, so -1. And it wouldn't matter if I had said 0, -1 was the first point, and -8, -7 was the second point. As long as I have both points there, that's perfectly fine. So I do want to find the slope of these 2 points. So I can either use the graph that they provided for me, or I can use the slope formula. Remember, slope is just the difference in y's, that's my rise, over my difference in x's, that's my run. So if I look at this one and I say, you know, how far up did I go? So I went from -7 to -1, so I went up 6. And then how far to the right did I go? So I went from -8 to 0, so I went over 8. So my slope, and I'm going to go ahead and write this over here because I just didn't give myself quite enough room on here. I zoomed in a little too much. So I have 6 over 8. I need to reduce this, so make sure it's reduced. So divide by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So here's my slope. So I have 2 points, which I can use to calculate slope, or I can use the graph here. So remember, to get 6, it would have been -7 minus -1. Minus negative means plus, so it's really -7 plus 1, which would get me -6. -8 minus 0, which would get me -8. And then I can reduce down to the same idea here. So I can use the points to calculate slope, or I can use the graph to calculate slope. If you're not given a graph, guess what? You can graph the points if that's how you prefer to find slope. You are welcome to do that. Just because you're not given a graph doesn't mean you can't use one. And we have graph paper available for you if you need graph paper. Definitely do not draw your own graph. You will not get the correct answer because it needs to be a nice, neat, straight line with the points graphed nicely in order to do that off of a grid. So don't draw your own grid paper, and be as neat as you possibly can when you are drawing this. So use a ruler or a straight edge, like a piece of paper when you're drawing the line, things like that, so that you're nice and neat. So you're going to pick one of the 2 points to use in your point slope equation. Or you could use y-intercept. So the y-intercept in this case is actually very easy to find because it's one of my points. So the y-intercept here is -1. So I can actually see that very nicely here. And then the slope, well, we already found that was 4/3. It's going to be the same for either one. So I can actually use either one of these two. Since I know my y-intercept and I know the slope, I know a point and I know the slope, I can use either equation. So let's go ahead and write both just so you can see, and they are both correct answers. Either one is correct. It's not telling me it has to be in slope-intercept or point-slope. It's not specifying. So I can write it in either one. So on this one I said pick a point. It does not matter if it's the first point or the second point. Okay. So let's go ahead and pick the first point here. So we have -8 and -7, and this is x, this is y. So this is x1 and y1 when I'm putting this into the equation. The y and the x in here are going to stay y and x, the ones that don't have a little number denoted. Okay. The rest of everything is going to change. So I'm going to go minus y1, well that's this -7. So minus -7 is actually going to be +7 because it's minus negative. So I'm going to write that a little bit nicer so that I have more room here. Equals my slope, which is 3/4. We found that in the step up above here. And then minus -8, which is going to be +8 again. So here's one equation that I could use. Or I could use this other one down here, which would be y equals x. So remember y and x, they're both going to have y and x in them. It just kind of depends on what we're doing with them. So y equals the slope times x. I'm actually going to scooch that a little closer because these are multiplied. 3/4 times x plus the y-intercept, which would be -1. So I'm not going to put plus -1. I'm just going to put -1 on there. Either one of these equations is correct. I know they look a little different, but I could actually change this equation, this point slope, into this equation if I wanted to by getting y by itself. It would actually reduce down to the same equation. Or I could change this slope-intercept form into point slope if I wanted to. So I can do either one or the other. I can actually change it. It just kind of depends. But they are the same equation. They're just in different forms. So keep that in mind. All right. So down here, we're given a little less information because we're not given the graph. We're being asked to graph it, given the point and given the slope. So I don't have to write an equation on this one. I'm just graphing it. So I'm being given a point. So we're going to start here. Instead of starting at the y-intercept, we're going to start at the point we're given. So we're going to go -5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And +2, 1, 2. So I went left and then up like that. So remember, it's always right or left first and then up or down. That's always our ordered pair. Right or left, then up or down. So here's my starting point, and then from there I'm going to use slope. So then go here to the slope. So it's a slope of 1/3. So slope is 1/3. So I'm going to go up 1, right 3 from my point. So up 1, right 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I can do that as many times as I feel like. I could keep going. 1, 2, 3. You don't have to keep going. You can just do it one time because you only need 2 points on Alex to graph a line. So you would click the little line tool and go click, click, and it's going to do that for you. On this one, I have to go kind of back and forth to get the whole line across just because mine isn't quite as nice. But on Alex, once you have 2 points, you click the little line tool, which literally I think just looks like this. And then it's going to have you click on 2 points and it's going to snap that line for you. Okay, so that's graphing a line with a point and a slope, and it's also writing equations in either point slope or slope intercept. We practiced both. So go ahead and go on Alex and give it a try. When you do this on Alex, you do not have to do both. You pick one of these. If you have the option of both, pick the one you like that's better. Okay, you do not have to write both equations. Alrighty.